And greetings everyone, and today I'm going to make a project presentation with a academic paper called Protecting Cryptography Against Compelled Self-Incrimination. Beforehand, I would like to make a declaration first because in our presentation we will talk about some of the USA law and the related court cases. But we need to inform you that the analysis here is just a reference for the presentation. If you are seeking for the formal legal opinions, please call your lawyer to do it. Okay, let's start our presentation with a background and introduction part. And first of all, we need to talk about a concept called MPC, multi-party computation, which is enable parties to carry out such distributed computing tasks in a security manner. And we don't have a trusted third party here, but we use the distribution of the computing tasks to find the function over their input here to keep them in secret. And after we talk about MPC, and we try to give you a law which is come from the United States Constitution Amendment 5, we will call Amendment 5 later on, is that law shall be compelled in any criminal cases to be a witness against himself, which means that you have the right to silence and you don't need to answer any questions during the trial under the police or to court. But you will ask me how this related to our topic cryptography, because this can apply in the cryptography related things. Just like here we have a case, and from the word from Amendment 5 you can see you are allowed to not cooperate with the order with government and police to decrypt your device to let them access your information in the device. So you can see the example right here. However, the right to silence is not absolute because only apply for the requests that they are computed, incriminating, and testimonial. For the first two cases, it's very easy to understand. It say that the statement that you give warranted or government will save you from the prosecution, then these two kind of requests is not protected by the Amendment 5. But for testimonial, we would need to have more details on it because according to the Amendment 5, the provide the mind of the defendant is not allowed in here, and we have the direct and indirect testimony, but we have an exception that not protected by the Amendment 5 is that the implied testimony adds little or nothing to the sum of the government information. So if its implied testimony is a foregone conclusion to the government, then Amendment 5 will not be applied here. And therefore, we are possible to face a problem called compelled decryption showing under the example under here. However, we are still talking about the nature of the cryptography details, just like password or key. It is still under the arguing process. Is that those cryptography details are protected by the Amendment 5? So we need to discuss it more. So here is the first contribution of this paper is to defining a terms called foregone conclusions. First, we talk about the doctrine of FC, and you can see the statement here, the judgment statement from Fisher case in 1976 from the United States Supreme Court. You can see that the existence and location of the paper are the foregone conclusion and taxpayer add little or nothing to the sum together for total of the government information by encrypting that he is in fact has the papers. So under this statement here, and we can say that the court say that no constitutional rights are touched here. So from the judgment, we can say that the compelled request is acceptable for if the government and police have the knowledge from you, but the additional information that they know is just none or little. So under this case, and also this is not related to your mind, then the compelled request can be done. So you can see the example here, and the police have the knowledge that around your device has some trading records. Then he can make a request that compelled to you, and then you need to decrypt your device to show the trading record, and it is not protected by the Amendment 5. And we are going to define FC by using some security games, so we need to briefly talk about the settings. We have a government here, we represent in GN, a respondent here able to change the nature and execute at the beginning of a game and execute the C, the compare action. And nature, we will the entire world except the respondent mind, and C, compiled actions, which is represented in C and C to the power N R, and output a taste script like this, a tau GC. A simulator, and also we have a simulator, we build a taste script tau dash, which is indexable from C and accessible for all the nature but not for the respondent. The effort and E verify the respondent and change the nature equal to the knowledge of well of government. We have a distinguisher, and finally we have the polytimed interactive Turing machines here for C, G, and S, which is formulated by Kennedy, with all the polytime are in the security perimeter lambda. And after the settings, we are going to start our security in a simple way first. And first of all, the government will tell the respondent they are going to perform a compare action. In this case, we can assume that this session may based on respondent mind and the whole nature, and the government will need to provide the proof of this request is an foregone conclusion, and the output of the proof, the result of the proof, should be as the same as the compare action, but without using the respondent's mind. And next, the respondent will have a chance to take action towards the compare action. The respondent will need to prove that the compare action raised by G is based on his or her mind. To achieve this, an encapsulate well is created, which is a combination of the nature and also the respondent mind, and the simulation have non-negligible probability to disagree to match the compelled actions, and the compare action, and this result must same with the must same as the evidence, because if it is not the same, the respondent will lose this security game here. Then we will perform a thought experiment. We have a distinguisher that to perform this experiment with the input of compare action and the simulation that we mentioned in previous 2 slides of this simple security game. If in the point of view of distinguisher, it is they are indistinguishable, then C is a FC. So in the last few slides, you can see the simple security game here to help you to understand the whole overall overview of the whole flow of our security game here. And actually, we are going to talk about the actual security game here, as this will be the definition of FS come from. So let's talk about the setting of this actual security game here. And we have 2 games can performed. One is real game, which is the government, the GN will interact with the respondents, and the ideal game is that we will have a simulation of S of the government GN, which will interact with the nature that prepared by Arrow, and this will forge the taste script. And after the setting part, and we move on to the actual step. First of all, the nature will be initialized randomly, and also the respondent can modify the nature at this time at the beginning of this game. And next, we will have a verification step, as the nature is changed previously, and we need to ensure that the respondent and the changed nature is equal to the knowledge of well of GN. If this verification step is failed, the security game will terminate immediately. Then the security game will go to a return stage, return the nature and also the taste script. For the real game we mentioned previously, this will return a taste script that including the G and the C, which is the government and also the compel actions. And for the ideal game, we will return a simulator S, which is a simulated taste script, will made by the simulator. After two security game we mentioned previously, and we are going to define FC here, which is based on the actual security game we mentioned just a page ago. And for a action, the compare action, that is FC, and there are four conditions should be satisfied. The first condition is the satisfiability of the evidence, which means that all the game we perform should not be simulated at all. We need to have this one game is a real game. And secondly, the second condition is the non-censorship of the evidence, which means that we need to allow the respondent to change the nature. And the third condition that you need to satisfy is that the CGS, the compile action, the government and also simulator are the probabilistic polynomial time machine, which is in time of 1 to the power another. And the final condition that we need to satisfy is that for all the allowed respondents, the probability that the distinguisher can distinguish the real game and the ideal game is not negligible here. After defining FC in the last page, we will also need to consider a situation called a sequential composition, which means that the government can try again to raise up a new compelled actions which have the adjustment from the last compelled action, just like changing the required disclose things from last one. So you will ask me that is it the definition we have defined is still secure? Yes, it is still is secure under this situation because that about the theorem listed here, and this theorem can be proved by testing the limit of the early limits of early instant under the nature that stored the simulated version of later instance. To recap what we have just talked for a moment, we have talked about the FC and we defined it by the security game previously. So how about the cryptographic system that we use in common? So it comes to our second part of this paper, the main contribution of this paper, and which is the analysis of the comparability of the cryptographic system that we always use. Before we start the analysis, we have some primitives which I need to tell you. We assume that the respondent have a method called r.s, and this r.s can access the sequence of the respondent's mind, which is like password or a key or the value inside the commitment. Now we talk about the first system, which is one-way function, and we've left a one-way function f, which is x to was y, and for any existing r.s, and we let that the e is like this, which is meaning that for the meaning is produce an element which is p-image to y, which belongs to the capital letter Y by X, capital letter X. Also, we will have a new evident E dash, which is known by the government. Then the computational actions, which is equal to RS here, is a FC with respect to the E, if and only if the G, the government can able to provide a S that reliable to produce R.S using E. So previously we presented lemma, and we can prove it as the C is deterministic, so G needs to simulate C perfectly to avoid the detection on hardcoded.s in C, so it is proved it. And mention one more thing is about the simulation. The simulation is impossible when the E is null and also the small y, the Y is towards the small y, except if the E show that RS is existed in somewhere in the nature. So after these two pages, we can simply to say that making a P image of Y, usually it is not a FC. Next, we talk about the commitment scheme, and we have a commitment scheme here which contain commitment and decommitment step. When we commit S, then the result will output C and R, which C is sent to the government side, and also the R is produced here to keep by the respondents. When we decommit C and R again, and we will return back to the S, the simulator. Next, we go to the formula first, and here is we define this is the first lemma, which is meaning that the compile action C with a commitment and R to sample a C is a FC under the situation that the government have the evidence that exists RS. And why it is like this? Because the commitment S can be filled in by any random value by a trivial simulator, and the simulator can deceive the distinguisher that have RS in it. Therefore, if a distinguisher can able to commit of RS in the commitment of any value without opening, then the hiding properties of the commitment algorithm will be break. So the actions is a FC, and then we have two things to let two formula. First formula is to first formula we mentioned here is a decommitment machine that decommits the value of C provided by the GN, and the E is meaning that we have the RS in the evidence here, and combine with these two formula and put it into a scheme, a commitment scheme. This commitment scheme is a FC with respect to the E and the simulator F. Yeah, only if having a simulator F S dash that's computing RS is FC with respect to E and S dash independently of the commitment scheme. Why is it like that? Because we can prove it by applying this formula and also the composition theorem that we mentioned in the previous part to prove that this is a true statement. Okay, but to make a short conclusion here, but we can see that the above situation occurs under some conditions. So in commitment scheme, we can say that it is not usually a FC. Then we move on to the zero knowledge truth part to make an analysis. We divide it into two parts to analysis. One part is for the IGK proof, interactive GK proof here. Another is a non-interactive GK proof. First, let's put an eye on interactive GK proof first. And you can see a C3 here. It's a FC with respect to E and S. E is the evidence, S is the simulator. When the government evidence can enough to show RS is a witness to MP statement. Next, we put an eye on the non-interactive GK proof, and we'll have a C, a compile actions, which is the NIGK proof using the witness of RS and able to access CRS in the nature, and CRS, which is the short term of common reference string, and it is stored by the respondents and verified by the evidence here. And the C that we mentioned in here in here is the FC with respect to the ENS if an extractor that returns a witness existed. So you can have also see a conclusion, a very small conclusion about the GK proof is that those FC situation occurs under some condition happen. So for the GK proof, we can say it is not usually a FC. I'm passing the part of talking about the zero knowledge proof. We move on to the PRF one. We have two conditions that it will have the FC cases. And first of all, first case is here. We have a compiled action simulated by a key of a K like this, and the output is a FKRS, which is FK is a PRF divided here, and it is a FC with respect to any E and that exists RS. And how to prove it? The proof method, you can just follow the direction of proving the C commitment NR is a FC in the previous part about the commitment scheme. And the second condition will have the FC produced here. We define another computed action, which is computes FKX with the key is equal to RS and X is already perfectly noted. With the evidence is the equal to the RS with equal to A. If a simulator S is existed, and this computational action, compare actions is a FC, and so you can see the similar conclusion can be made with the three that we mentioned. As you can see, the FS occur under some conditions, so we can also say the PRF is not usually a FC. Finally, we reach the analysis part of the symmetric encryption. We will focusing on the counter mode construction, and you can see the this part. You can see the E is already equal to RS when RS is equal to KN, with the K is a secret key, M is a message. It means that the respondent mind is already the evidence, and the compelled encryption of M under an ephemeral key is a FC, but we need to warn you that if you're using the respondent secret key K to do the compelled encryption and also the decryption of ciphertext, and it is not the FC. A case that FC is mentioned before. Another case is here. If the government knows the evidence and the PPT algorithm case such that the simulator is equal to this KN algorithm, then the compelled decryption of a known ciphertext C is a FC under the evidence and also the simulator. So under the case that we mentioned beforehand in this page, we can have a short conclusion that under the symmetric encryption system, FS occurred under some condition. So it shows that the symmetric encryption system is not usually a FC, and this is shared a similar conclusion with the primitives or the cryptography system that we mentioned in this part. They are not usually a FC. They need to fit some of the condition to let them be a FC. And after the analysis part, we move to the last contribution of this paper, which is named the resistance against compelled requests. We will build a photocon that's resistant to against the compelled request later, but we will have some introduction first. We have considered about how past action affected the result of a question. Is the current compelled request is foregone or not? However, how about for the case that the future compelled request under the current photocon execution? And to initialize this problem, we can talk about a synonym like this. And we come back to MPC again, but this time we define two people. One is Alice, one is Bot. Here we can show it in figure. And Alice and Bot are joined the same MPC here. Next, later, the government need to access the information in the MPC, so to get the details up that related to the Alice. And the government can access the MPC system with the help from Bot, which is using his details to access the data in the MPC related to Alice. Now the government get the details in the MPC, and the government have a knowledge about the Alice message that in the MPC. Since the output of the photocon is a FC, so the Alice needs to provide the message in her MPC, and cannot reject it because it is allowed in the Amendment 5 that we mentioned. So after the scenario that we present previously, we have something to discuss here. First of all is Alice message problem. As the government get access from the MPC to get the Alice message by using bot details, which means that the photocon is open a party, and the message that Alice store in the MPC may include the Alice secret input, which is related to her mind and previously protected by the Amendment 5. However, as the output of photocon is a FC, so Alice's mind is now not protected. So in this case, we need to discuss more details about it. We can discuss it. Start by FC resilient, which is meaning that the running a protocol that not open a party to any additional compelled requests. But you can see that the previous example is clearly not FC resilience. Okay, we now propose a model here which is a FC resilience, and let a protocol X here, which is interactive among the parties P star, P1 and 2, Pn. We use P to represent the parties, and we have a evidence machine called E, and now we assume CG is a FC in a F hybrid model where assessing P star with respect to ext and S for sometimes that T which is greater than 0. And in here I would like to talking more about ext, which is ext is the ext will run an evidence machine E and check the X multiplication to a nature N in the hybrid model we mentioned with secure arrays. And SE is a simulator which we mentioned in previous one about the settings. So we have existing three machines C0, G0 and S0, which C is a compare actions, G is related to government, and also S is a simulator, and such that these three we are existing these three machines C0, G0, S0, such that first of all the C0 with G0, this one is a FC with C0 and S0, and second thing is for all respondent and nature, the two compounded disclosure which have indistinguishable trace script. Those traces are made. Those traces we have two such trace scripts, and first of all is made by C0 and G0, and also another is just C and G only. So we have mentioned a lot of things here. If we want to prove the X is FC resilience, then resilience for P star, then those things mentioned here should be hold true so that it can achieve the target we want. So we're finishing the definition of FC resilience, and you can see a slide we called it the PBKDF module, which I will written as here afterwards, because we will use this in the construction of the protocol in the next slide. As mentioned previously, we are going to construction stage, which is we are going to construct a FC resilience two-party computation, and this computation is based on Yau's garbage circuits, which is FC resilience for one party in FPBKDF hybrid setting, and we have a terms called Gabriel's, which is the parties of the photocon which is the only receiver of the output of these photocons. And as our photocon needs to maintain the malicious security against the evaluator, so we need to have a compatible with the method that ensure malicious security against the Gabriel. So we have two methods proposed here. First is cut and choose, which is a technique that improved from the Yau's photocons and provide the security to against malicious adversary, as Yau's one can only provide the security to against the semi-honest adversaries. And the second method is authenticated garbling, which is a framework that to obey efficient constant round protocols for maliciously security two-party computations. For the photocon that design here, the main idea is to self-garble the table, which means that the party will confuse the input and output wire. The purpose of this action is to avoid the interpretation on input and output wire without using password. The garbler will enter the password into the FPBKDF module during the fail phase of the photocon. The first phase is FP computation, and we will do it when the garbage circuits are preparing. For the input wire, the label will be created by the garbler uniformly random with the pseudo-random text that based on PBKDF. For the output, non-off gates are added by the garbler. For the output label, this will choose by using PBKDF again pseudo-randomly. Afterwards, all matching of wires labels for in or out bits will be deleted. And next is the phase that after received the input from the party, we have the resulting value with the complicated text that compute previously. Garbler will use the PBKDF again to match the text. There are two purposes for these phases. First, the garbler will know which wire labels is sent to evaluator. Second is when sending, it can still protect the input in the photocons. And the third phase that we will enter the password is the ending phase, which is the end of the photocon. The garbler will use his or her PBKDF with the output table of the NOT OP gates to find the outputs. So after this three phases, we can see that after the above transformation can ensure the FC resilience and maliciously security. So we can make a small conclusion here is that the photocon that we present previously under the same cryptographic assumption as the malicious secure Young's garbled circuits, it is secure against the malicious adversary and FC resilience. Now we move on to the implementation part. Based on the framework in construction part that we present previously, there are two main changes. First of all is about the output. This will send to the garbler, not to the evaluator. And second is the self-garbled garbler tables, which we send in the right place here. And the PBKDF using in the implementation is Argon2i, ARGON2i, which is a new generation of memory hard function, which is oriented at protection of low entropy sequence without secret key. And in the table, you can see a lot of symbols we try to have an introduction to you. The W is the wild index, the X is the true wild value, X hat is the mastered wild value, and the lambda, which is equal to R XOR S, is the mask of the wire. The value of R is held by the garbler, but it is already deleted securely in the pre-computation phases that we mentioned, and S is held by the evaluator. Let's talk about the performance. This table is the test result, which using the implementation mentioned previously to run repeated repetitions. The setting is in a small circuit, and you can see under a low repetition cases, the FC resilience cost is high compared with the total time, but the cost become negligible after the n is increased. And after we talk about the implementation of two-party computation FC resilience, we try to extend this to other cryptographic system, which is now in zero knowledge proof, and now we try to introduce a idea called GKGC, which is based on the Young's-Garbled circuit technique, which is a zero knowledge proof of knowledge using the garbled circuits. Prover use his or her witness to be the input to evaluate the circuit, and under the circuit is confused by the verifier. It is FC resilience with self-garbled table for the verifier. But for the prover, it is not, because in the cryptographic point of view, interactive zero knowledge proof are generally not transferable. But under this, the government still can learn something based on the testimony from others in the protocol. We can also apply the technique into a construction of FC resilient multi-party computation. We just do the two parties beforehand, and to achieve that, we can use a protocol called BNR multi-party garbled circuit protocol. But however, it is only providing the semi-honest security on it. From the FC resilient perspective, we have two challenges that we need to consider. First of all, is we need a more complicated output opening protocol, which all the parties need to use their password to read the result. And the solution here is using a self-garbled NOOP gates. The second challenge we need to consider is that the party needs to work under the assumption on others participants can compile the result of computation. All parties' inputs are sequenced. To solve this problem, we can propose a MPC, which mentioned before, but we apply to the differentially private functions to solve this problem. And that's it for the whole presentation. Thank you for your time to listening this presentation. Here is the reference. Thank you very much indeed.